All right, good morning, everybody. Looks like we've got people joining in already. People are continuing to join in. We'll give it just another second before we kick things off. But thank you so much for joining this morning, and we're excited to hear more from all three of these businesses and pick their brains a little bit. I'm going to turn off my chat noises. All right, we're one after, so I think we'll go ahead and kick things off here. So welcome everyone to our webinar this morning, Fertile Ground, How New York State Composters Are Responding to Growing Demand, hosted by P2I, Pollution Prevention Institute. So I'm Ava Labuzetta. I'm a senior staff engineer here at P2I, and I'll be moderating the panel. Before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping things to go over. So we will be recording the session today, and you'll be able to access the recording using the same link that you did to enter the event today. So that will just magically transform to the recording link after we close out today. And I also wanted to draw your attention to a couple features at the bottom of the screen. You'll see a questions icon, which is where we ask that you submit any questions that you'd like answered by the panel today. And you can also, you'll see once people start to submit questions through there, there's an upvote option. So if you see a question that you would also like answered, you can just click the upvote, and that'll kind of rise to the top there. And I'll be filtering through those questions and asking them as they come in. You'll also see a chat icon where you can send messages to the group. So these messages will be visible to all attendees. Your first name will show up if you enter a chat into that box. And if you'd like to, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Just say who you are, who you're affiliated with, so that other people have a sense of who is on the webinar today, since we can't all see each other. And in both the questions and the chat box, you'll see a bell notification up at the top. If you want to mute any of the chat or question noises that happen, go ahead and click on that. And then last for the icons is the full screen icon. At the bottom of your screen, you should see an option to go full screen. So that will allow you to just see the presentation and the speakers a little bit bigger. That feel free to use that if you'd like. And if you're having any technical issues, we do have a couple people behind the scenes. So feel free to put a message into the chat, and someone should be able to help you out with any technical issues. All right, so we have three amazing panelists with us today, representing three different compost and food scrap hauling businesses in New York State. We have Ignacio Villa, who is a co-owner of Farmer Pilots Compost, based out of Erie County. We also have Molly Lindsay, who is the Director of Operations at Community Compost Company in Ulster County, and Jennifer Perry, and I believe she'll be joined by John Norman here at some point during the Q&A too, and they're both owner-operators of River Valley Regeneratives in Clinton County, New York. So we have great coverage of New York State. And so today our agenda is pretty simple, but very exciting. Well, it's all about picking the brains of these panelists, and you guys are a wealth of knowledge and experience in composting and hauling and starting these businesses and growing them in New York State. So I will start off by giving just a brief introduction about P2I and the services we provide to businesses in New York. And then I'll be handing it over to the panelists to take about 5 minutes each to go through, a bit deeper of a dive introduction about yourself, your background, and your businesses, and kind of get the gears turning for people to ask questions. And then the majority of this session today, 30-40 minutes, is going to be open Q&A. So I'll kick things off with a Q&A with a couple prepared questions I've got for the panelists, but be thinking about any questions you'd like to ask them and drop them into the question box, and we'll get to those as well. We'll have plenty of time for questions. All right, so with that, let's jump right into some slides. Okay. So I'm going to take just a couple minutes to tell you a little bit more about P2I, and then hand it over to the panelists. So the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, or P2I, is an organization based in Rochester, New York, but we have a statewide reach. Our mission is really to reduce the environmental footprint of New York State by working directly with businesses, nonprofits, and municipalities. So we do this through several different ways. We provide direct one-on-one type of assistance through projects. We create educational material and do outreach and education with that, putting on webinars like today, and publishing more passive resources and case studies on our website. We also fund research and run a few different grant programs, one of which I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide about. But we are a consortium of a few different universities. So we're located in Rochester, New York, partnered with RIT, but we have 5 university partners that help us spread P2I out across the entire state. So we're partnered with Clarkson University, RPI, Cornell College of Ag and Life Sciences, and Binghamton University, in addition to RIT. And we operate primarily with a budget from the Environmental Protection Fund that's administered through DEC. We have about a $4 million annual budget, which we use to provide that technical assistance and create those educational resources and run those grant programs for New York State. We also do leverage other funding streams as appropriate. So while the majority of our funding comes from the EPF, and we work with DEC, that's not the entirety of it. And one of those programs that's funded actually through Empire State Development, I wanted to take just a second to tell the audience about as well, as I think it will be quite applicable to many of you. We run a equipment reimbursement program called the Food Waste Reduction and Diversion Reimbursement Program. And through this, we are able to reimburse companies for capital equipment purchases that allow those companies to increase food waste diverted from landfill or incineration. So we can fund businesses that generate, haul, or recycle food waste, food scraps in New York State. And we reimburse 44% up to usually $100,000, although there is a process to go above that as well. This funding has been available since 2017, and we can actually reimburse retroactively for projects implemented anytime after June 2017, and we expect it to be running through May of next year. So we're still accepting applications on a rolling basis. If you are interested in this, please feel free to reach out to me, and hopefully we can find a way to support you. And actually, all 3 of the panelists today have applied to and been reimbursed through this program. So we're seeing really great implementation of these funds around New York State, and we're really happy to be able to support growing businesses. So with that, I am going to hand it over to our panelists. I think Molly will start with you. And if you can tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do at Community Compost Co., that would be awesome.
Thanks so much, Ava. I'm excited to be here today. Thanks for having me. So my name is Molly Lindsay. I'm the Director of Operations at the Community Compost Company and Hudson Soil Company. And just a little bit about my background. I have previously worked in sustainable agriculture and worked for farms and farm-related businesses before joining CCC. And I started with the company in the first year of business. I was the first full-time employee. And since then, we've grown to about 10 employees we have now. So my role is really about overseeing the team and just general company operations as well as outreach. I definitely do a little bit of everything, being a somewhat small business. But our company was founded in 2013. We're a women-owned business. We're New York State certified WBE. And we have two parts of our business. So we do food scrap collection. We collect from municipal drop spot programs. We work with transfer stations in New York State and also communities in North Jersey, like Hoboken and Jersey City. We do commercial collection. So we work with different size businesses from offices to grocery stores, coffee shops, retirement communities. We kind of handle any size business. And then we also do door-to-door residential food scrap collection and subscription-based drop spot programs. But we process all the material we collect on a farm in Kerhonkson. And then we also sell finished compost products. We're bringing in about 40 cubic yards of food scraps per week. And moving forward, we're looking to establish a couple additional sites, hopefully in the next year, because our goal is to create smaller compost facilities throughout the region to reduce hauling distances of food scraps, and also make those products available locally. And we're growing our routes. We're also expanding our soil products line to include different blends and types of products. Can you advance, please? So just some more details about our operation. So we use the aerated static pile method to process all the material we collect. Our collection service spans throughout the mid-Hudson Valley and North Jersey, as I mentioned. And we get our finished compost in about 5 to 6 months. We sell our products to a lot of farmers in the region, as well as home gardeners, landscaping companies. We've also worked with stream bank restoration projects. And aside from the finished compost that we sell, we also create worm castings through our vermicomposting operation. And then we're also getting into liquid amendments. So we're selling liquid compost extract right now. And yeah, I think that's a pretty good overview.
Awesome. Thanks, Molly. And then passing it off to Ignacio, if you want to go through a couple slides and tell us a bit more about yourself and Farmer Pirates.
Thank you, Ava. Thank you for putting this together. And I have to say thank you to the P2I program for the support they've given us in growing our business. Farmer Pirates Compost started in 2012 when a group of urban farmers decided they did not want to bring compost from rural areas to a city where there was plenty of materials to make compost. So they started very small. They started with a Kickstarter campaign. They raised $15,000 and they started with 20 residential customers. I joined them in 2016 when I moved to Buffalo. And we are now at 400 or so residential customers. We have about 15 restaurants that we serve in the area. And we have 2 big contracts, one that has been in place for about 6 years with Buffalo State College of the SUNY system. And our biggest current contract is with Tops Markets. We serve 15 of their stores, and that was the incentive for that to happen was the law, the recycling law. So the folks at Tops have been thinking about doing this for a while, and they decided it was time to jump in and do it. And thanks to conversations I had with their sustainability coordinator, Bill Thomas, we went ahead and jumped and purchased the totes that we needed to do the collection. And then we improved the site so we could handle that excess material. And we bought a dump insert for our pickup truck and a second pickup truck so we could handle the capacity. If Ava, if you want to move to the slide that has the Google Earth picture, I can guide you through what our footprint looks like. It's not a very big site, and we still struggle with how to improve it. But if you look at about 10 o'clock in that bigger slide, we have a pile of wood chips, and to the right of it, we have some of our improved surfaces. And on there, there's a little brown strip where I had started laying chips to move a windrow onto it. East to west, you see a long windrow of incoming materials, and then north to south, there's a couple of other windrows that we're working on. The part that looks like a blonde patch on the right-hand lower corner of that picture is a big, huge pile of horse manure and bedding that we get from local stables in town. And so that's our carbon source. On the picture on the left-hand side at the bottom is our insert dumping a load from one of our tops collections. And on the right-hand side, that's what it looks like on Tuesday afternoons after the tops collection happens. We mix it with wood chips and horse manure and build our windrows that way. And then our latest investment on the top right-hand corner of the picture is a screener that we bought from the folks. It's a used screener we bought from the folks at Rust Belt Writers in Cleveland. We just brought it home a month ago, and it's been a real important game changer for us in terms of screening capacity, because that adds value to our material, and we're happy to have that piece of equipment. We still struggle with we don't have a lot of cash flow, and the operations are supported by the folks who buy our subscriptions for residential service, and our sales are growing. Being able to sell screen compost is a big thing. We would like to have a way to cover our material so that we can dry it and start making different mixes and blends, but we're not there yet. That's pretty much how we're operating and how we want to grow. I think that's good enough for now.
Thanks, Ignacio. It's very cool I'm always surprised when I go onto Google Earth and I'm able to see such detail in things, but it really comes in handy for viewing, compost sites and everything like that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, this picture was taken end of May or in May of this year.
Cool. All right, thank you. And then we're moving on to Jen. Hopefully you can see your slide up here, and just let me know when you want to move forward.
Absolutely. I just echoing Ignacio, thank you. A huge extension of thank you to PPI, P2I. I have many hats in the compost realm, and we have maximized, I think, every possible resource that you guys have out there, including this is our second round of the diversion grants, and we couldn't have done it without you. You were our seed, and thank you so much. And Ava has just been an incredible moral supporter throughout all of this. So our business, which is a little difficult to say, River Valley Regeneratives, we call it River for short. We are an LLC. It is a 2-person co-ownership. My partner John is with me, and he'll be available for the question and answer section. We are, as Ava said, located in Clinton County, which we are really close to the Canadian border, Redford, New York, which is a little south of Plattsburgh. So yeah, we do have a pretty broad span. We chose our name because we want to grow into our name, and composting is one element of what we do, but our motto is seed to soil, because I came to this realm as a market gardener and have built a greenhouse, made really nice market gardening business, and have also do starter plants for sale. So, and I'm also starting to get into seed saving. So we have other hopes in the future. We come to this realm with a very eclectic background. I'm just going to name some of the things, and you guys can guess between John and I who's what. I also am a project manager for an entity called Compost for Good, where we support community scale composting in the North Country. In our backgrounds collectively, we have a mechanic, a helicopter pilot, a mom, a metal worker, metal fabricator, a biodiesel fabricator, grant writer, wilderness guide, professional dirtbag. We got it all back there. And in many ways, our histories collectively have all kind of brought us to this point here. But our journey started where I sent John, my partner, an email last year, and knowing, he's a mechanic and he was kind of wanting to do more than just fix cars. So I said, hey, John, do you want to build a drum composter? And I still have this email, and he's like, sure, why not? So that really is how this journey started. But even before that, it's really important to us. We're very value driven, and it's really important to us to serve our community. And sometimes it's kind of, what does that really mean? But for us, we are really focused on a decentralized model where we can really build up community scale resilience. So we call it the decentralized autonomous collective. That's our motto. So our timeline from there, John said, sure, I'll build the drum composter. If I had 20 slides, I'd love to show you the trajectory of how this drum composter came to be into existence, because it started with a really big drum and it went from there. And as the past year, our journey started pretty much last October is when the composter was fully constructed and operational. We started collecting food scraps last fall, and was pretty much SUNY Plattsburgh and a couple of residential pickups. And we put out a press release, and almost immediately were inundated with an interest from around the Plattsburgh area and beyond. So from there, it's been little steps. So in the beginning, I was hand shoveling 2,000 pounds of food scraps into this opening of the composter that you can see in the picture. It was not fun, but I was like, hey, I don't have to go to the gym. This is great. But it got old. So John then from there built a really nice hopper that we can now, with the forklift you can see behind me, manually feed the composter. And then I was hauling compost out into the yard to cure by a little wagon. And I was like, all right, that's getting old. So we got a tractor, and thank you again, PPI, for these advancements. And I am currently hand screening the compost that we bring out to cure. Because of the drum composter model that we use, we can get some chunking. So that was fun too, but also getting old. So Ignacio, I'm really excited about your screeners in our future for sure. So that's our really quick overview of our trajectory and how we've gotten to where we're at. It's been an incredible, crazy ride. Every time I'm on one of these meetings, we learned so much. I'm so excited about the dump insert. That's really intriguing. This is a list of the entities that we are now collecting from. It's exploded in the past, like I said, year, and it just grows all of the time. I'm really excited to hear about tops. We are starting to poke at Price Chopper. That's why the question marks are there. These are places that we're hoping to expand into. Our future is always, every day, that the core of our work is to make the highest quality compost possible. Like that's what we focus on. We then don't market very well, but that's okay. We want our compost to speak for itself. But part of our process is a lot of our collections is either free or extremely undervalued. So we're trying to figure out how do we fairly price the collection portion of things. We also are trying to figure out how do we prioritize our future investments. For sure, a tractor was important. The drum composter was important, but do we go ASP now? The composter's been amazing and we love it, but do we go into other directions? So those are really big questions. And then this really big fat question at the end is, how big do we want to get? You know, there's a lifestyle and a value choice. And, you know, if we collect price trapper across New York State, we're industrial. And do we want to lose out on those like homegrown values that are really important to us? So that's a really high level overview. If you want to go to the next slide, I can share a few pictures of our situation. I included this slide because it really, again, the concept of regeneration, it's the whole cycle is really important to us. And, you know, we're going other directions into the future. Urine composting is out there, human bodies is out there, animal mortalities, remediation, biodiesel from animal feedstock. So we're hoping to grow into that bigger model of regeneration, but this is what we do now. And there's the hand screening situation that I have next to the tractor. And this is anybody who's operating a composting operation can appreciate. This is John perseverating on our temperatures. We've got really great temperatures, but every once in a while they're not. And it's like, come on, you know, bacteria, do your thing. And the upper right-hand corner is, again, the full cycle of things. And the really full cycle is when we, of course, eat. But the slide in the middle is really awesome to me because through Compost for Good, one of our partners has purchased a microscope. So we're able to, we test our compost through Penn State, but we also put the finished compost under a microscope, and he can tell the health of the soil by what it looks like. And this is a super happy slide. We're really excited. This is our first batch that we sold, and things are swimming. If I had the video, it's really awesome. It's pretty cool thing to see it on that level. Next slide. And this is just this is kind of more on the collection end of things and the sale end of things. You can see we're very small. We're not sure we've been selling by the cubic yard, but in the short term, so we can kind of build up our own cash flow, we're kind of focusing on smaller batches by bag. We're selling 1 and 2 cubic feet bags of finished compost. And we also are accompanying with any sales will be a copy of our testing results, a picture of the slide. You know, we really want the customer to be educated. Upper left-hand corner is one interesting venue or events. That was an eye-opener for us. This is our small trailer, was given to us through a grant. We've maximized every conceivable grant in the North Country. And the last slide I'll just point out, because we probably all are used to this, this bin in the middle was put out at SUNY Plattsburgh, and that's what we got. And we're like, how much more clear can we be? It says food waste on it. But that was what was in the bin. And I'm sure we can all appreciate contamination challenges, but that's our overview, and happy to hear the questions.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for sharing more about your businesses. I always love to hear the next level down of detail and see pictures. Pictures always kind of bring it home as to, you know, what you all are doing on a daily basis. And I love to see just the different backgrounds of people that end up in composting. I always think is really interesting. Like people from all walks of life and different professional backgrounds get passionate about composting and decide to start or get involved in businesses. And it's really cool to see. So with that, we're gonna transition into the Q&A portion of this webinar. So just a reminder, if you have questions, just drop them into the question box and we'll get to them here in the next 30 minutes. And I think I'll start off with a general one for all of you to chime in on, but certainly you're all involved in either starting and or growing your compost and hauling businesses in New York State. So I'm just curious, you know, we have people on the line today who are in that same spot or a few steps behind, maybe thinking about starting a business or are in the process of growing and trying to scale up and finding it challenging. So do you have advice, maybe one piece of advice that you would want to share with somebody who's considering starting a business such as yours in New York State? Or maybe what do you wish you knew before you started?
I can chime in quickly. I hear this repeated multiple times in multiple operator presentations is, and they're kind of like conflicting bits of advice, but the first one is just do it. I think a lot of us have started so simply. Like some people have a bike in a trailer and a bin and a friend, and they start there. And it's so simple to get into. It really is. And you can do it in a way that you can start and then build over time and expand. And then the second bit of advice is to kind of be sure this is what you want to do. It's not pleasant. It is for us because we love it. We love it, but it's hard work. It can be really frustrating, but it's also the most incredible rewarding thing when you get those temperatures right and you send something away for results and it comes back and it's spot on and your customers are like, this is the best thing ever. But you got to really want to do the work.
Cool. Great advice. Thanks.
Yeah. I also echo that. I feel like the point of entry for this, like if you just want to start collecting, you can have a pickup truck and some buckets and you're started. So I feel like that's really great. And that's how we started initially. So I think one thing is, we started doing both food scrap collection and composting at the same time. And it's definitely hard to juggle both sides of those businesses. But I think starting kind of like incrementally growing and like starting more simply and then expanding over time is good, because it can be overwhelming to try to get into too many things and like events. And, everyone is wanting to do something that's relevant for them in terms of like, oh, can you collect from our wedding? Can you do this huge festival or something? So I think just like honing in on really what you want to focus on and mastering that first.
Cool.
And I would add that it's important to have somebody that is willing to work on the business instead of in the business, because I think we all love to muck around in the compost and make it right and doing all that. But I think that putting together the pieces of the business and tracking who's tracking a route, for example, is really important. One of our co-workers, Tara, is an awesome organizer, and she keeps us all in line by making sure that when we go out on the truck collecting or whatever, that we know where we go, and she answers the emails, and she handles the complaints, and she responds to whatever needs to happen that way. The difficulty in growing, I think, sounds like we all started the same way, very small, and just with very few resources, very little capital to start with. But there comes a point where, yes, the very labor-intensive work gets old, and then it's time to buy a dump insert and a screener and all that. So that it's difficult to decide when the right time to make those investments is, especially when cash flow is pretty low and profit is not very big. It's hard to grow a business when there really isn't a lot of profit. And the other thing is that if it were not for the people who appreciate what we do, who subscribe to our services, we couldn't run this business. But it should be local. We shouldn't be driving all over creation to pick up stuff. And but those are challenges that we have to meet. It's almost through policy. If we want to increase the density of our collection routes, there should be help from the policymakers. There should be some kind of incentive for the city that says, okay, you guys are going to divert food scraps, and the Farmer Pirates compost truck shouldn't be driving a mile sometimes to get from one bucket to another, which is the case in our routes. It's crazy. It's not right. But one of these days we'll get to that density, I think.
Yeah, it seems to be going in that direction, certainly, but that was a good lead in to another question I wanted to ask. And you mentioned before that the New York State food donation and food scrap recycling law did have an impact on your business, Ignacio. I'm curious if Jen and Molly, if you've noticed an increase in demand due to that law. And Molly, I know you're in Ulster County and they have their own specific law around food waste as well. So yeah, have you noticed that be a main driver in your growth in recent years?
Yeah, we have taken on some clients through that law. I would say we haven't felt like a super strong effect from it yet. I think as time goes on and the requirements of how much food you're producing when you're required to compost, as that goes down, I think we'll experience it more. But yeah, I think just having the law out there and just growing awareness of food waste and the issues around that, as well as composting, has definitely been like a great driving factor.
Cool.
Yeah, the first time I actually heard it specifically mentioned by a client, so to speak, was Price Dropper, and I was really pleasantly surprised at how familiar he was with the law. So word is getting out, I guess, and that part. I don't know if the word surprised me, but it was a pleasure to hear him talk about that. So he was aware on that level. But I will say we're not really at this point dealing with folks who are compelled that way. It's a factor, but it seems like there are other reasons why they're wanting to divert their food scraps. But the thing that is possibly coming is that the city of Plattsburgh is possibly going to be passing their own organics diversion law. That's really important to them. So I'm really curious about these local laws and the impacts that they could have on them. One thing that we talk about Compost for Good, and I know, Ava, we've talked about this before, is we're really curious to see what the trajectory will be in New York State. If it's going to go beyond the large scale generators down to the residential scale over time. We're curious to hear about that.
Yeah, I think we're all curious to see what the next steps are with that. And yeah, thanks for sharing your experiences with that so far. It sounds like it's affecting some businesses more than others, but there's also seems to be just this collective growing interest in compost from customers, whether or not it's related to the law.
Not sure I understand.
Sorry.
That was funny timing.
That
was trying to pick up on what we're talking about. So.
That was amazing. All right. Well, I guess on the topic of growth, we have a few questions about bringing on new customers and the process related to that. I'm going to pull one of these up. So Jesse asked, how are customers like K through 12 schools and grocery stores trained on what's accepted for composting? What happens when you receive contamination from them? So if anyone wants to jump in and provide some input on that, feel free.
Sure. I can start. So when we start any program, we offer a free training session with a new client, and depending on who the client is, it might be different. So sometimes we're just meeting with like the manager of a cafe, and other times we're doing assemblies at schools and things like that. But if we receive contamination, we will take pictures of it and send that to the customers so that they can see what is actually in there and hopefully correct that. And we send a few warnings, and then we do administer contamination fees if it's something that continues, just because of, we're really trying to make a very high quality compost and keep as much trash out of it as possible. And it takes time for our staff to pick out that material. Yeah,
same here. We do on the school level, we do assemblies. which we found to be incredibly helpful. And I also want to point, I'm being joined now by, this is my partner, John. So if anybody has, he is the designer and builder of this incredible composting beast behind us. So if folks have questions about in-vessel drum composting, manufacturing, anything on that scale, he's also the recipe guy. So yeah, we do a lot of, same thing. We actually, that picture that we shared with you of the contamination in the one bin, we took a picture of it and sent it to the school. Same. We're really in the fortunate situation though right now where we really don't have much contamination. Because I do feel the school, there's a lot of buy-in. They have students who are helping with that. The assemblies at the beginning of the school year definitely help. SUNY Plattsburgh at this point is back of the line compost or food scrap. So we're not getting the post-consumer scrap. So that really helps a lot. But so far, even the residential scale, we've been pretty fortunate in terms of not having to deal with a lot of contamination. We are considering having, though, there are a few buildings at one of our schools and having a competition. They do tray scrapings and to see who can come up with the least amount of contamination. But we're pretty fortunate so far.
And we use this little magnet here that says what we should use or not. This is a refrigerator magnet for our residential customers. And we also, when we get a new customer, we try to explain to them what is acceptable and what is not. We have a very interesting collection of kitchen utensils that have that arrive mostly from our commercial customers, knives and spatulas and that kind of thing. But it doesn't seem to be a huge problem for us. But education is very important and it's an ongoing thing. We have not ever gone as far as instituting a fee for contamination because it seems that it gets worked out. The grocery store produce managers, it's difficult for them to take the rubber bands off of all the bundles of things that they throw out and so on. And we kind of tolerate a little bit of that. The screener helps out with that. And the bane of all composters is the little tags that all the produce has. So I don't understand why they can't make those biodegradable. So.
Yeah, I just got a really nice paring knife. It's funny. That's why I was laughing. This is great. I didn't know where it came from. So
definitely salvage some things from the compost.
Reuse, right?
Yeah.
The first. So we've got a couple related questions to. I see one in the chat that has to do with if you had a magical tool to assist your process, what would it be? And I was going to ask a similar question to if there's one piece, as you've been scaling up, is there one piece of equipment or software or something that you feel has made that scale up easier or that you would really have a tough time doing without? Or maybe not.
Tractor.
A magical tool would be like some kind of a magnet to pick up all the plastic from the piles. My driver was joking about training the chickens on the site to pick out plastic too, but I don't know about that. But I think a piece of equipment. So a couple of years ago, we got a truck with a dump body, and it has a toter tipper that you can put in 3 toters at a time. It's a 12 cubic yard truck. So that has definitely been a game changer for us because we can empty out the totes on site into our truck, and then it has a power washer on it. So we can clean out the bins. So we don't have to have double the amount of containers, because in the past we had been collecting everything mainly on dump truck or on pickup trucks with a lift gate, and then manually emptying the bins onto the compost pile, and then cleaning out the bins by hand as well. So that's definitely been, I think, a main game changer for us.
Cool.
We used to collect we used to swap totes in our pickup truck, and a big improvement at one point was a lift gate, obviously, but the truck would only fit 15 totes, and we'd have to come back and forth to the site. So adding that dump insert with the tote dumper, the arms that dump, was a big improvement. But then it meant that we couldn't bring the totes back to the site to wash, and we do not have the pressure washer on our truck. So we opted for the compostable liners, which in some circles are questionable as to whether they qualify for organic certification, which we have not sought. So
Yeah,
I know that.
Sorry, we actually had a question about that too, if the liners were causing any issues.
Well, the liners break down as long as they get inside the pile. When you look at a picture of our windrows, you'll see scraps of the liners flapping in the wind. But once they get turned into the pile, they break down pretty quickly. So, but I do not know exactly. We haven't pursued organic certification for our compost, and that could be an issue. I don't know what the other panelists say.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
I don't know if we want to do that now or after, but.
Yeah, go ahead. And Jen, if you had anything to add on the magical tool afterward, we can get back to that. But Molly, please.
So our finished compost is certified for organic use. And so we had used bio bags in the past, but we had to discontinue the use of those bags because they're not accepted in the feedstocks for the certification. So the only materials we're able to take are food scraps and uncoated paper products. So we just stick to that.
Cool. Thanks.
Again, I have questions to myself, so I know maybe I can connect with you guys after. But our magic tool is we're definitely coming along probably behind folks. We're in terms of we are same thing. We're hauling totes up a trailer ramp, and it's kind of a pain. But the magic tool for us right now is the drum composter. I'd say that's what kind of sets us slightly apart. And again, John designed, built from scratch. We really just, the only thing that came to us was the drum that was prefabbed. Everything else, that's a steel drum. Everything else, John brilliantly put together. And again, through this grant, it's challenging, but it's also having an in-vessel option really, it mitigates a lot of factors. The second element that we are, I had a pretty large greenhouse that I was using for my market garden, and we are using a second round of grant funding to upgrade it, the plastic shredded. So we're using that to possibly cure compost into, we're trying to always expand our feedstock options. So carbon sourcing is challenging sometimes. We're going to use the greenhouse to dry possibly sawdust, wood chips, things like that, and just to have a winter place for compost to cure more effectively. But that magic tool thing, that's a really interesting point to think about.
Yeah.
And it keeps evolving, I'd say. Yeah, as we explore other means of composting. So
Every one of our tools is a magic, has created magic. Our first one was the front end loader, which is a 1 yard bucket, and it's a pretty big machine. It's very old and beat up and has a lot of issues, but it's almost paid for. So it doesn't it's a diesel engine. It doesn't like to start in the winter. We don't have power at the site. We're trying to put power in so we can put a block heater on it. But every little bit of then the screener is a magical tool, and the dump insert with the grabber is another magical tool. So every little step adds to our capacity.
Yeah.
I'm interested in Molly, you said you have static pile aeration. Do you have a heat exchanger or a blower that does that for you?
Yeah, we have.
Is that from the Vermont guys, the Agri Lab Tech guys?
No. So we have just a blower system that's hooked up to perforated pipe that runs underneath the compost piles, and it's set on a certain timer, and it's connected to electric in our barn.
So you blow the air out through the piles, not in through the piles to the blower.
Yeah, the blower blows the air underneath the piles.
Okay.
Well, sounds like there are lots of magical pieces of equipment, and this composting is just a magical business, I guess.
I go for the chicken.
Yeah, it would be magical. We had maybe a quick question. A couple people had just asked for clarification on the size of each of your sites. So maybe, I don't know if they mean, processing throughput. Maybe if you could talk to the amount of finished compost perhaps, and then maybe just footprint of the site, that should cover it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ours is a little different because it is the in-vessel composter, which is currently situated in John's mechanic shop. And then in the yard, how big do you figure the yard is? Like an acre?
Yeah, an acre.
So we have an outside yard that's about an acre. The greenhouse is 30 by 60 to 72 feet long. So in terms of volume, it's hard for us to say because a lot of our finished compost is in the drum still. So in terms of cubic yards of finished product, same, we're still trying to dial in on our measurements, but we're probably in the 20 to 30 cubic yard range. But, again, not knowing how many cubic yards are in the drum, and we're processing about 2 tons, depending on when schools are available, but about 2 tons of food scraps a week, all through the composter at this point.
Yeah.
Our site is about an acre and a quarter. And we're processing about, we're estimating that we're going to process or have 2,600 cubic yards of finished compost this year. And we have a fairly large barn on the site. So it's not heated, but that's where the blowers are connected, and we store toters, and that's where we have our vermicomposting bin, and just store most of our materials. And then we have a small office on the site. We are a DEC registered facility.
Okay. Cool.
Our site is about, we use about 2 acres of a leased property. I think we have probably 1 acre of improved surface on it that we're working with working the compost windrows on. We don't have, we have a couple of movable sheds on the site. That's it for infrastructure. We process about 10 tons a week of food scraps, and you guys saw the big pile of horse manure that we have stockpiled. That is our carbon source. We actually had to stop our supplier from bringing it to us because we were flooded with it. We had too much of it, and I was piling it too high. I was afraid it was going to start on fire and we'd lose it all. But that source is local. It's a local stables. They're happy to bring it to us for free. So that's a great thing. I think we produce about close to 500 cubic yards a year right now.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So we've got a few minutes left here, about 6 minutes left. And we probably won't get to all of the questions, but I'm trying to pick through to see if there are some overlap. We did have one unique one asking about, so I think the question of like siting facilities comes up a lot. It seems like it could be a roadblock for new businesses that are interested in starting a compost site. So can you speak a little bit to what is involved in siting a compost facility? And also there's a specific kind of sub question to that, probably directed towards Jen, if there's permitting requirements for the in-vessel composter. So maybe we could start more general with just the process of siting and considerations to make with that. And then Jen, if you want to talk about in-vessel specifically.
Sure, I guess I can jump in really quick. So we were really, really fortunate to, John was able to purchase at this incredible shop. Like every guy that walks in here is like, whoa. So we have a really big shop that just he happened to have because of his business as a mechanic. And it happened to come with an open yard that was housing tractor trailers over time, and I used to have sheep growing on it. So we are in the really fortunate position of ownership. We have natural buffers built in between the roads and the neighbors, hedgerows. It's very flat. There's no water. We just got really, really lucky in terms of the siting. We vent our composter every once in a while. The neighbors are like, whoa, rich compost today. But they're pretty friendly about it and understand the whole process. In terms of permitting and registration, we are only by volume only required to be registered. And I will say that there's some question about the how the whole process is viewing in vessel in terms of exemption or not. We're still trying to, as Compost for Good, who promotes in vessel composting, we're trying to work through that question.
So where we're located, we're on a property that there's several other farms. But, you know, our goal starting the company was to locate on the same property as farms so that there was synergy between, you know, composting waste from the farm and then that product being used in those businesses. And, you know, one thing that we found out along the way is that composting is considering manufacturing. It's considered, yeah. So like you're on farms because of different zoning regulations, we're not able to operate on a farm, but where we're located on the farm, we're able to do what we're doing. So I think, you know, when you go through the DEC process, there's certain restrictions in terms of stormwater management and how close you are to a water source in terms of like streams or things like that. The owner of the company is an environmental land use planner, so she has a lot of experience kind of dealing with these sorts of issues. So she's been great to see that whole process through. But I'm sure she'd be happy to answer questions if people have any after this.
Thanks, Molly. Do you have anything to add, Ignacio?
Yeah, we started really small in an area of the city, the east side, where there's about 20% of the area is houses. The rest are empty lots that used to be houses. We're at a dead end of a street that is surrounded by railroad tracks on pretty much three sides, because the railroad goes around and there's a lot of turning and so on. Trains go by there all the time. We do have a DEC permit, and recently the city decided to question our being there. It appears that we had started our project on a zone that was light industrial, and they never questioned our being there until the new green code, ironically, changed the zoning to residential, one of the most restrictive zoning areas. So we're in the process of requesting a variance with the city right now. I know that other composters in the community have faced huge obstacles in terms of their ability to site a composting operation. It seems that there are issues of smell and leachate and things like that we need to address, and that we're working on making it better all the time. I believe that we should have decentralized small composting operations all over the city, but that's going to be a tough sell to any municipality, any community, unless it is embraced as a really as an employment generator, as a climate change mitigator, all the different ecological benefits that something like this brings. But our communities are not there yet. I'm hoping they will get there sometime.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all your experiences with the permitting and siting. I know that's a topic that comes up really often, and we get a range of people's inputs on it, from, it really wasn't a problem to me, to it's been really challenging. So I see in the chat too, there's been some discussion among the attendees about people to contact and more information about that process. So that's great.
Yeah, I'm going to say one of the cooler stories I've heard, and Molly, maybe this was you, is to co-locate in farms. So, like, is that what you guys do, Molly? Like, there's some business model where they move around and they have relationships with farms, and that's beautiful. I think that's a great story.
Really cool. Yeah, thanks for adding that, Jen. It's hard to believe, but we're already at the end of the hour here. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time and just take a second to thank everybody for joining in this morning and asking great questions, and obviously to our panelists for taking time out of your busy schedules to share your knowledge and answer questions from the audience as well. It's been really great to hear more about what you guys are doing, and can't wait to see where you go next. And if anybody has follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to P2I if they're specific to one of the panelists. If you guys are open to it, I'd be happy to pass them along.
Sure.
Because there were some questions that we just didn't have time to get to. But I think with that, the last thing I wanted to just mention is that the link, like I said at the beginning, the link that you used to sign on today will bring you to the recording of this webinar if you did want to look back at it at any point. And I think that covers everything for today. So thank you again to everybody. It's been a great conversation, and excited to continue the conversation too.
Thanks
so much.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Ava.